Challenge yourself to change lives with the Big Belt Buckle Challenge. They make a no-strings-attached charitable donation when participants complete one or all of the 6 athletic challenges. In doing so, they aim to build a worldwide community that transcends sport and encourages people to make a positive lifestyle change while helping those in need. For 2023, a difficult but doable set of challenges has been created by Jeff Privete himself. They have all been inspired by his personal experiences throughout 2022. The events can be done in any order, and with the exception of the Road Gravel Challenge, there is no time limit for completion of a given event. All you have to do is make it through. Completing all 6 will require an incredible amount of dedication, courage, and a willingness to embrace the journey, regardless of the outcome. Won't you join Jeff at thebigbeltbucklechallenge.org? This is the Big Belt Buckle Challenge. Hello and welcome to the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate podcast. Thrilled to be here with you, Rod. How you doing?
Jim, I am fantastic. Thanks for asking. And it's good to be online with you again. I'm excited.
What I'm realizing is how fast time and life go by. I mean, you just said, I don't know when I'm going to see you next. And I would say, well, heck, you only live down the street, but yet I have not seen you in person for a couple of weeks. And I just realized that if you're not following a plan for your life, whether that's personal or in business, you're going to miss a whole bunch of opportunities, or you're going to be behind always. I think it's important to have a plan.
You're right. And we just need to schedule it.
Schedule it, have objectives. And again, I'm thinking about family, like I was just talking to my wife's family about Thanksgiving and going down and seeing them. They're like, well, you sure are early. I'm like, yeah, but it'll be here before we know it. And if we want to do this or that, we should buy the tickets now, I'm like, no, that makes sense. But I'll be so relieved when September, October roll around. It's like, oh, we've already figured out Thanksgiving. We know what we're doing. The family's set. We got the tickets, et cetera, and we're good. And it all comes from just a little bit of planning because life moves fast now.
It's super fast. And I have to share with you, Jim, my wife is booked through January of 2024.
Awesome. Oh, great.
So, I mean, we're in June, right? It's the 12th of June and not even the 4th of July. And we're already planning for next year. It's one of those things. It doesn't stop. We have to just keep plugging forward and making the time.
Well, listeners, make note of this. If you're not planning out your personal and business objectives, start making it a habit. 5 things a day that you want to accomplish. We've talked about that a dozen times. If you're part of the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate, we've got all kinds of worksheets and templates to help you with that, as well as we have our community platform, which is a lot like a Facebook platform. And we hold each other accountable, but there's a task list that will hold your objectives accountable there too. So use the tools in front of you. It's not going to hurt.
Absolutely. Best thing's a calendar.
Well, and I hate to say this. So I worked out this morning in the gym. First time I've been in the gym. I'm not even going to admit how long, but it's amazing how fast that time went by. I thought, I just finished 75 hard. No, I finished that like 4 months ago.
Was it 4 months?
Almost.
It seems like maybe a month.
It's been a while.
Wow.
Okay. I started on January 2nd with my wife. January, February, March. So April, it's been 2.5 months.
Okay. Still a long time.
But you know what? You can collapse your physical fitness and your diet and everything else in a hurry.
Right.
So
I've done that many, many times. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, I have a topic for you and we'll keep this semi-brief. But what the topic is, and I'm going to thank Andy Frisella and Alex Hormozy for this because I was listening to their podcast, they're recording today. It was actually Andy's Real AF show with Alex, the most recent one. I don't know what episode it is, but they talked about posturing. And their point was, don't posture your way through business. In other words, don't bullshit. Okay, don't bullshit. And Andy gives this story, and man, I've heard this a dozen times. Okay. Alex talks about having dinner with some family and a group of entrepreneurs were there for it. Obviously it was a setup. which he was fine with. And he says, oh, okay, so what are you guys all doing? He starts talking to them and they're like, oh, well, we're going to do this. And he says, well, the best thing to do is set up an LLC, get your thing going. Everything's good. They all agreed, off and running, great dinner. Well, 2 months later, somewhere around there, I think he said, he got back together with these people. He's like, hey, how's the business plan going? And the one guy says, well, I'm working through getting my LLC established. And the conversation went like this between Andy and Alex. Like, that is such bullshit. Okay. You could set up an LLC during the time that we're having dinner together, especially in Montana. Like, literally, I can set up an LLC in under 15 minutes. And the only reason why it took me that long is because I know I'd have to track down my EIN number, which, by the way, would only take you about 3 minutes once you got online with the feds. So when you start posturing about all these important things you have to do, which in reality are just stall tactics, they don't fly. You're either going to do the task or you're not. And don't get overwhelmed by the language. And that's where I come up with the posturing, because their conversation went on to say, when they meet different business entrepreneurs about, how they succeeded, or, they're looking for an investment because of whatever that is. They say, when these people come in and they try to dazzle us with their language skills and their posturing, we immediately know they're full of shit. The reality is there was a need. I had a skill set. I filled the need, and I kept filling the need for as long as I possibly could. And next thing I knew, I had a successful business because I'd created the platform and I did the groundwork and I laid a solid foundation. But there doesn't have to be all this posturing of the analytics and the special schooling that, all these things to try to make yourself look good. Sometimes business is as simple as that. And what we do is we posture ourselves into a point of not doing anything, and the job never gets done. Now, I've coached people. I've even coached people recently that wanted to seek out to do something, and I gave very clear, specific directions. I mean, even when you look at our business plan, by the way, it's stepped out, right? Step 1, step 2.
Right.
Yes. I gave really clear, specific directions, but yet this person got in his own way and will continue to be in his own way until you just actually start doing the work and stop posturing in your mind the magnitude of the task, right? So
absolutely.
That's a couple different versions of posturing. One, it's self-inflicting your posture, and then pushing it out to the people you're around to make it feel significant. Oh, I'm working on my LLC. Yeah, right. What? That's not a thing. It's not a thing. So anyways, Rod, what are your thoughts on that? I know you've seen this.
Oh my gosh, have I seen it? First, there's a great story, and I know I've shared this with you, but I'll share it with our listeners. If you go online and use some research, you'll find a guy named Ray Thompson, who started a business, a local business here in Northwest Montana that went worldwide in the silicon computer chip industry. And he tells the story of this guy, and I can't remember the guy's name. I wish I could, because it's relevant to the story. It makes it even better. But this guy comes in to Mr. Thompson's office when he's just getting started, right? I mean, he's got this business going, and it's taken off, but it hadn't taken off yet. And this guy walks into Ray's office and starts talking to him, and he says, "Well, you're going to be successful." He says, "I've seen in my time," this is one of those like Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman. This guy's been around a while. And he said, "I've seen him come and I've seen him go." And he said, "And I can pretty much tell which ones are going to make it and which ones aren't." And this is relevant to your topic, Jim, because he said, what the difference is when I walk into a startup's office, and it's very basic. It's austere. It's frugal. It's not leather chairs and mahogany furniture and fancy stuff all over. It's just the basics, and this is where work gets done. It's like a sweatshop. And that's the way Ray's office was. And the guy said, "These are the people that make it." And so your point is the posturing. You can get enough startup capital to make yourself look and feel really good and put on all that makeup so you look like the kid going to prom who's never put a suit and tie on in his life or anything else. But all of a sudden, you give him a fresh haircut and some nice clothes, and by golly, this kid cleans up. and the women with their makeup and new hairdos and new gowns and all the glitter and razzmatazz. And that doesn't change what's underneath. What's underneath is the authentic person. It's the authentic values. It's the authentic work ethic. It's the real. And I know even with skateboarding, when my son was skateboarding and BMXing, he always talked about posers.
Yeah.
Right. What's a poser? The poser is the one who sits back and, is always leaning on his bike and giving everyone advice and all this stuff. But, he wears all the right clothes. He's got all the latest, most expensive equipment, but he can't do the tricks. He can't do the ride. He can't perform. So he's a poser. And I get that. And it actually comes, I looked it up. It comes from a French word. It's like paussière. It sounds more fancy, right? Paussière. if I knew French, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it, but it's somebody who is literally posing, acting like there's something they're not.
Wow.
And that is everything we train and teach and coach against. We talk about being authentic and being real, and just stand on your merit. And that's enough. So yeah, I've seen it, and I've seen it in sales. I made a living in professional sales, and you would talk to other salespeople, and they, no matter what they told you, you could always cut it in half.
Yeah, for sure.
It was standard in the industry. Oh yeah, how you doing? Oh yeah, I've made X amount of sales this month already. 50. It's like, well, it's probably like 20. Okay, stop it. Right? You just know. So there's no point. It's embellishing. Okay, I'm going to come out and say it. And I like a good story, right? You can embellish to make a story good. And I often tell my family that, you remember it your way, and I'm going to remember it the way it happened. And the way it happened in my head isn't necessarily the way it happened in real life, but it adds some color and flavor. So if you're not just entertaining, if it's real life, embellishing is lying. Good point. That's the long and the short of it. So if you're telling a story to dress it up, if the wind was blowing 20 mile an hour, go ahead and make it 30 and it was knocking you down. And we've seen news crews do this, kneeling down in the snow to make it look waist high.
And have got caught.
And have gotten caught. So again, just be real. Just be real.
Well, I like your point about Ray's office and it being very simple and not posturing to be more than what he is. Because what's really important about that is that in a lot of startup organizations, you can lose a lot of money up front by posturing. And that startup money could be hard money that you've borrowed from an investor or a lender. And by trying to posture your way into something with zero results, using that money not as a tool, but as a posturing mechanism, could cost your business down the road. And I've got two examples. One, it cost the business, and two, it didn't. So the first one, I was consulting in the cannabis industry for a few years. And this was about, 6-7 years ago when it was pretty hot in California. And the operation that I was consulting with was some basic farmers. They had some greenhouses. There was no frills. There was no fancy office. It was literally a single wide trailer that you rent, and you showed up to a dirt parking lot and you went into the trailer and you conducted business. And, it was just like any other actual farm in Salinas Valley. Okay. And we made a ton of money, literally tons of money. Now we would go and tour some of the other facilities, and most of them, we don't have what they call Kaiser Hospital here in Montana. I don't think they do in the big cities at all. Well, Kaiser Hospital is the big hospital in California and Nevada and a couple other states. I mean, it's just like, imagine a hospital with all the bells and whistles.
Right.
So we would go to these other cannabis facilities, and the guy that had hired me to consult for him, he goes, "Oh, we're going to the Kaiser Hospital cannabis facilities because they've spent so much money on their look and feel. And of course, the owners or the CEOs have spent all their investor dollars on Lamborghinis and, fancy dinners and all this stuff. They're all going broke." I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I'll show you when we get there how much waste they've put in." And we're talking about millions of dollars. And it's all in posturing. And what's a crazy cycle about that industry is that these guys will posture what the venue looks like, the facility. It's going to look like this hospital, and we're going to have all these great technology. So the investors buy in on that, which is actually their own demise, because by buying all that fancy stuff, they're overspending on mechanics that are not necessary to be successful. They look good. So then I'm sure down the road when the investor's like, hey, we're not making any money, they're like, well, we spent all this up front on this great equipment, but the industry won't sustain it because we're not selling enough. Imagine that, right? So in the case of starting a business and looking at how you're going to utilize your initial dollars, whether they're your own hard-earned dollars, investor dollars, or dollars that you have borrowed that have been loaned to you, be very fiduciary, very responsible with those dollars.
Right.
Because it could cost you your business down the road if you're not smart with how you spend it. Now, I'm not saying that you can't have a nice facility, but earn your way into that facility over time based on profits or a percentage of those profits. Then you can get there. Everybody wants it all right now, And I know for a fact those businesses are not in business anymore, the ones that I visited, as well as so many other in that industry. Now, that was my first experience where they lost. Now, fortunately, the second experience is my own. And this was a major mistake that I had made, and I corrected it, before it was too late. When I started my tequila company, we wanted to uphold an image, which was fine. And we had a moderate office, very small, in Newport Beach, and it was on the second. I was actually on the third floor. Had a good view, but I mean, we're talking small for 5 people. And we had a great opportunity to expand into a 7,000 square foot warehouse with lots of office space. And we had these high hopes of utilizing all that space. We moved and signed a lease in another beach city, big space. And we had these high hopes of bringing customers in and doing all these fun activities. We had a bar, we had a lounge, we had a stage for bands, we had an area where we recorded radio shows, and people came and recorded every week. And we had all of our beautiful offices upstairs, and we had this awesome warehouse with all this storage space and shelving and all that, right? We could not sustain that office over a long period of time because the rent was $7,000 a month compared to the $1,500 we had in the small office space. Now, we could justify and say, well, we needed some warehouse space. We could have got warehouse space down the road and kept our offices and still probably spent $2,500 compared to the $7,000. Well, eventually we had to look back at that and say, you know what? We can't afford this because we're not making enough revenue to support this and all of our other operating expenses. And we got out of there thanks to a kind gesture from my brother who bought a warehouse and gave us a sweetheart deal. So there's a little icing on that cake. The point is that you can make mistakes in your infrastructure and what could appear to be posturing. And we had a little bit of that, but you can catch it before it's too late. So if you find yourself in a position of doing that, I'm going to advise you now, try to get out of that slump or that awkward position of overspending because you want to look a certain way. And I would recommend easing into that, especially if it's not generating revenue. So those are my 2 stories on posturing. One bad, one turned out okay. I'm just saying, let's not be those people. And let's just be real as it gets. Yeah. So, all right. Any closing thoughts for this show?
I think just spend within your means. That's really what it is. And if you're doing something other than that, and I'm telling you this, and it doesn't matter if you're a lawyer or a doctor, an Armani suit and a Rolex watch does not make you better at what you do. And people will see right through it. What they want is your skill set. They want the real deal. They want the person underneath all that crap. So yeah, don't be wowed and subdued by that stuff. Save yourself the money.
Right.
There you go. That's
Good
it.
point of view. Okay. Well, that's our perspective on posturing as well as being organized with your schedule. So thanks for listening in. If you like what we're talking about, please share it with a friend. If you've got recommendations, topics you want to hear us talk about, please email us And that's it for today.
See you next